could be on one board and the spouse to be on a different board, so you should be on the ZBA.
Yeah, that would be smart.
ZBA definitely needs.
Yeah, and we know Laura, so he'd be okay. He'd be okay.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025 meeting of the Litchfield Planning Board. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call of members. Michael Croto, Chair.
Jared O'Connell, Vice Chair.
Jeremy Robitaille, Secretary.
Russell Blanchett, member.
Letha Riley, member.
Jesse No, alternate.
Okay, welcome everybody, and with us this evening, Jamin Karoff, and our circuit rider from NRPC, and Joan McKibben is here, who is our planning board assistant. The appointment of alternates, Steve Gannon is not here this evening, he is our ex officio member. Jesse, would you,
No.
can we do that?
No.
No,
We have two folks out here.
Right,
We're also
Travis
missing
and Travis.
Travis.
Oh, that's right, Travis is not here. Would you be interested in voting in Travis's place?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll make you a voting member tonight to do that. Okay. Public input on non-agenda items, items not on the agenda for this evening. Any public input on non-agenda items from the public this evening? And seeing none, I will close public input on non-agenda items and go to item 1 on the agenda. I have Rick Charbonneau, Jim Petropoulos, and Morgan Hollis to discuss proposed northern commercial mixed-use development near Morgan Road and Albuquerque Ave. Purpose of this meeting is to get planning board input, and I see Mr. Hollis, Mr. Charbonneau, and Mr. Petropoulos here this evening, so why don't you guys come forward, all of you, to the table.
Thank you
and
for the
introduce
introduction.
yourselves.
Bring a chair up.
Save me some time. Yeah. I don't know who Mr. Tucker is.
Oh, that's Travis.
I mean, no disrespect,
We'll
but
get it when he...
good evening, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us tonight. I think you know we've got a development brewing. Rick thought it'd be a good idea if we came in and said hello. So the purpose of the meeting is really show and tell, answer any questions you might have, and present a plan that yet it doesn't have a name yet, but we'll get there. And, you know, I know there's some newer members here. This is a plan, and what you're seeing on the screen right now is actually presented in 2021. Morgan, Rick, and myself presented this plan, and it kind of showed some of the CPI properties up in the north part of town. And what we did, Rick wanted to just present to the town that, you know, it's just a plan, it's nothing firmed up, but what he wanted to represent, and I'm gonna approach the screen if it's okay, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine.
Was that, there's Hidden Creek, there's the quarry here, CV Highway, Albuquerque Ave, that with these properties that he's accumulated over the years, that there is a strategy to hopefully come in off of the Charles Bankhoff Highway with a back road to create opportunities for commercial properties in accordance with the NC zone. And then this was the property here that we're going to discuss this evening, right here, that we had identified as multifamily even before it was allowed in the NC zoning district. So we had put this together back in 21, came back in December of 24, and reintroduced it to the board as there was pending legislation about the multifamily in the NC zone. So the site I just described is what we're really going to talk about, and it's really that land between Hidden Creek Golf Course and the Charles Bancroft Highway in the NC zone. 6 parcels make up this assemblage. Eventually they'll be consolidated together to form one development, 26.5 acres. And Jay, if you want to scroll to the next slide, we start, I kind of turn the orientation slightly, but we're starting to begin putting a plan together. And if you're familiar with the land, it's mostly flat, it's mostly open, sandy soils. We've got good utilities. in Charles Bancroft Highway in Albuquerque with municipal water, Pennachuck Water. And so what's being proposed is, in accordance with your zoning, a mixed-use village development upon the property. It'll be designed in accordance with the recent zoning amendments that allow this type of project. So there's really two pieces to it. Let's start with the residential piece. What we're proposing is a similar project to Callaway Circle and to Rose Meadows, a townhouse development, 88 total units, 105 are allowed by zoning. So Rick's not happy with me, but the way it's being laid out is kind of in keeping with the theme of the other two projects. A lot of balance with open space. And I think you get that from the septic systems. You know, if we were in Nashua or Manchester with sanitary sewer, you end up getting 5 to 6 units per acre. Now, your zoning allows 4, but we're slightly less than that in the resi portion of it. Combination of 4, 6, predominantly 6 and 8 unit buildings. Again, utilities all underground. They're mostly there in Albuquerque. There are garage units, but not all the units have garage units, okay? Probably the majority have the detached garage. And the way we've cited this is along the backs of the buildings and away from Albuquerque. Albuquerque enjoys that wonderful, I call it Kentucky Derby fence, and landscaping that Rick did illegally, I might add, but put in some wonderful trees there that look really well. And so you've got this wonderful streetscape along Albuquerque Ave. Now, those units will actually front towards Albuquerque, and we'll have parking and access to the units in the back along Albuquerque. So a little bit different twist, but it's all about the curb appeal on Albuquerque. We have a road creating an intersection with Morgan Road, the Hidden Creek access. So we're creating a 4-way intersection there where it used to be Morgan Road all the way out. That will not be, it will be connected, but it'll be gated up at Morgan Road for life safety access. Okay. And then we come back to the north end where we're going to connect back into the commercial part of the project. These are private roads throughout the development. The commercial component is essentially two pad sites out front. I'll talk about the one at the corner of Albuquerque and Charles Bancroft first. That's the bigger of the two buildings. It's a one-story building measuring about 90,000 square feet. There is an equation for a number of units to commercial in the mixed-use village district. I believe it's 100 square feet per unit, times 8,800. We're at 9,000 in that particular building. It's a 60-foot deep building. And it's intended to be a multi-tenanted use. Your code wonderfully allows a number of very well-balanced uses that could go into this zone, from banks to restaurants to offices to dance studios and workout fitness facilities and things like that. And so that's kind of the vision there. We are showing a drive-through in the back of the building, which we'd like to discuss with you this evening. And we've got parking in that part of the project for about 52 spaces. The second building is intended to be a daycare. It's a 7,500 square foot building, 1 story. There'll be similar architecture on both. Rick is meeting with the architect tomorrow to start looking at the regulations and what they require, and so pen will be put to paper on architecture very soon. We've got outdoor rec space for the daycare, which is required by state law, and parking for about 58 spaces. And in doing a research on the daycare, this is a potential for a fairly significant number of occupant students per day and staff. And so you're probably wondering, why would a daycare need 58 spaces? But, you know, there could be as many as 40 staff there. In the way daycares work now, parents really are required to park the vehicle, bring their child into the facility, versus the old drop-off kind of portico share, which is
a little outdated. The access on the Charles Bancroft is centered on the property. It will be a right-in and right-out only access, and you can see how it's connected back into the resi. I think one of the early comments, I think emanated maybe from this board, was the interconnectivity between access, so vehicles don't have to go out onto Albuquerque and then go into the center and vice versa. I should also mention we've got sidewalks throughout our project. There'll be sidewalk connectivity to the front as well. And Rick mentioned sidewalk along CB Highway. You'd mentioned, yeah. Okay, great. And so in summary, it's the second inning in terms of the design and permitting of this effort. We thought coming here early would be able to incorporate any comments and thoughts you might have. We are on septic, usually one septic system per resi building, much like Rose Meadows and much like Calawa. Stormwater, obviously, will take advantage of those good soils that are out there for recharge. And that's really it. We've got a lot of work to do between now and final plans, but we think this project has a good balance to it. So, Rick, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, Rick Charbonneau. So, I mean, part of the problem that we have, we've been looking at what you guys are trying to come up with as far as what you want for regulation, what you want to see. The biggest heartburn that we have, we believe, is single row of parking in front on a main road. The reason for that, if you're going to have retail, you've got to have places for people to park. They're not going to park in the back of the building and walk to the front of the building. If you have 2 or 3 people in a building, if there's one dominant, then they're going to take all the parking and the other people are going to go away. Then, you have to have parking. I mean, you just have to have it. If you can't have it, then it's not feasible, because retail, you have to have parking to let people in. They have to be at the front of the building, or where your entrance is going to be. You don't want the back of the building facing 3A. That wouldn't look very nice. So those are things that we got to kind of discuss. You get your input on that, because if you're hard on one single row of parking, the project's not doable.
A couple thoughts, Mr. Chair, if I could. Jay, could you zoom in on that front area of the site?
Yes.
So I certainly concur with Rick's need. And the reference that he's citing is under 190-15.3, and I'll read it for the record. Not more than a single row of parking may be located between the front facade of the building and the street. Additional parking areas must be located on the side of the rear of the building. So what we're seeing there in front of the 9,000 square foot building is 37 parking spaces, but we're respecting the 50-foot green strip, respecting that front yard setback for a building setback for our parking as well. And the worry is, with 37 spaces, 9,000 into that is about 4 spaces per 1,000. We are showing 10 spaces in the back, and those would be really earmarked for employees that could park out back and then walk into that facility. So the worry is that if we were single-loaded there, we would really only get about 16 or 17 spaces along the building frontage, and we just don't think that that's enough parking. We do recognize the need of appearance, of not wanting to see a sea of asphalt in front of a building. We get that. I think there's ways that we can incorporate some green in that parking space to find that balance. There could be some very subtle berming in that 50 feet so that eye projected doesn't see all the cars, but we do want them to see the building, of course. I think that's important. So just to reiterate what Rick said, the last thing we want to do, we don't want to make a mistake here, and if we build with not enough parking and we've got a ghost of a building that we can't keep tenants because of parking, that's the last thing we want to do.
We already struggle in town to keep any kind of tenant in any of the retail buildings. Not that we have many, but there's a struggle. You know, you go over to, on 102, that little strip mall, you can't see it, so they don't stay in business. Couple of restaurants stays, but even the 7-Eleven or whatever it was at the front of it, now it's just, I think they just use it to make food in there and truck it off someplace else. But, you know, so if we're gonna have a coffee shop, if we're gonna have we have to have parking, and we just have to have enough parking. You know, I mean, go over to, I use Hot Rise a lot because I go there, but they don't have enough parking, so people are parking all over the place. But everybody wants to go in between all the customers there, you know, between everybody that's in there. No, there's parking in the back of the building, but no one's going to the back of the building and walking to the front. Just not gonna happen, it's not gonna happen. And so that it becomes a problem, then everybody's just gonna park everywhere and on the grass and places we don't want them to park, but that's what's gonna happen. And we just don't want that. I mean, we want, you know, I think I'm asking you guys to make a little movement on that, for that reason. Or go and look, you know, we'll come back in again, but go and look at different places and see where there's parking in the back. Look at a building like that and see if you can find it someplace where it's full and works. It's hard enough to fill commercial right now, never mind with no parking.
We often see regulations that speak to percentage open space in front parking fields, you know. And usually it's about 10% in the front, 8% in the sides. And we see that in New Hampshire quite often. You know, so that would mean we would need to incorporate a couple islands, which we don't like doing. We don't like the snow maintenance of it, but it does soften up the appearance, and I think it's something that we would consider doing.
And we're trying to, and we're also giving you more than 100 square feet per unit in this project.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're doing almost 16,000 square feet, which is almost double, almost 200.
Yeah.
So we can take one of those buildings out and make some more parking, but is that,
Right.
I can speak to it from a professional experience in that most towns have gone to this type of regulation. I like to call it a planner's vogue. It's in vogue. And that's on the basis that you don't want to drive by and see a parking field. And that makes some sense. Although, frankly, one row of parking versus two is not a great deal of difference in most people's minds. But I can tell you from real experience, 3 separate towns or cities that I've done projects in the last 3 years. They've pushed hard, didn't get any relief, built the projects, and they are exactly as Rick has said. Your end cap units might be a restaurant, it might be a convenience store, something that's a go-to. The rest, and so everyone pulls into park there. The rest try to park in the back, but you can't have a front door and a back door. You have to have, for security, a front door and not another front door. You're only going to have one front door. So if everybody has to park in the back to come in, they literally have to walk around. And that is really the problem that we're talking about. And so these recently built buildings, there's one that we were just chatting about that's been built a long time in Nashua, if you're familiar with it. Jim was mentioning it, that there's not adequate parking. On that, there's a double row of parking, but it's not enough. And that's La Coretta down on Daniel Webster Highway, and that's always been a problem because you get your good anchor tenant, and they all park in the front. No parking anywhere else. There's a new one out on Amherst Street in Nashua. It's got a big anchor tenant. They're having a struggle to fill other infill units because the first question they ask are, where are my people going to park? Oh, in the back, because we have plenty of parking in the back. Well, how do they get in? So now we're working with that project on a front door in the back side. But what do you do on the front side? So if you go there for a nail salon, for example, which is a typical infill, you arrive at the nail salon, you drive up, and maybe it's in the day, so the restaurant's not busy, you park in front. There's no front door there. You got to go around back to get in the front door. And it's become a real leasing problem. There's another community about your size that has a similar planning board regulation in their mixed-use zone. For the same reason, all good reasons. It has not worked, and it's half fill, and it's been 3 years, and they just can't find tenants. Again, not woe is on the developer, but woe is on the town, because they're missing the opportunity for what the town wants, which is a commercial center, small-scale commercial center. Same token, you don't want it to look like a strip mall, but you kind of have to go with what the market requires. You can, my clients are doing is requiring all their parking of their employees to the rear and off-site, but it still doesn't, one row of parking, and in this case, what did we say, 16 spaces up front, that'd be enough for one tenant in there, not maybe two less popular tenants, but it's not, and what's happened is people automatically gravitate to the front, and with a single row of parking, you have people parked there waiting to grab a spot when it opens up. This happens to be a non-drive-through coffee shop. And so everybody arrives at the same time, and everybody is just like waiting till someone backs out because they know that spot will open up. Not the best situation to have. So I think if you give some reality to it, we would appreciate it.
And, you know, this being the first one, we want it to be successful so that we can build the other ones, because, you know, the rest of the property we have. If we can't rent this, we can't build more commercial space. We just gotta leave it the way it is, you know, so so we gotta come up with a landscaping plan, a different look of the building to break that up, so, you know, something that everybody's happy with as far as what that's gonna look like. You know, as I said before when I came, I like the barn look. I want it to look like a barn, but we can do all that. That part's easy, but the parking is, we have to get the customers in and out. So,
The other thing, Mr. Chairman, I'll bring your attention to, we are representing a drive-through. And Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like what passed in January, restaurants not including drive-through services, so we probably need a little bit of zoning there for that. That would be a zoning board matter, but we just think it's proper planning. It gives flexibility. It doesn't mean it has to be food. It could be a bank. It could be something else with a drive-through piece to it. But I wanted to bring that to your attention as well.
Do you folks have, because we've been looking at supplemental design guidelines for the mixed-use village development alternative?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, and I know that Jay has been working on that with us, and we have been having discussions about that, so I just want to make sure that you
Right, so as a starting point, you can see here, I took the document, I highlighted all the things that we want to try to include, garages behind the buildings, and try to hide them from the public ways as best we could. So that was certainly one of them. Promotion of the sidewalk communities. There'll be quite a bit of sidewalk here, not only interconnectivity between units, but also getting people to that front commercial space. We know the architecture is a piece of it. The 50-foot setback from the right-of-way, which we've observed. You know, open space in the new zoning is only 20%. I'm going to venture to say we'll be probably north of 50%, you know, for open space on the total project. So we tried our best, Mr. Chairman, to knock off a bunch of these, but until we really scrub through it with Jay and Joan and Lou, you never know what I missed.
you know, and I'll go back to the same thing, it's drive-throughs. Do you guys, any of you guys drive through a drive-through? Or do you always get out of your car and walk in? I always get out of my car and walk
It
in.
depends.
Take a look at
If you had
you look at the
children,
line.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I think for the first 10 years of their life, I avoided anything without a drive-through.
Never unbuckle them.
I mean, it just, you know, when you have kids, you're not gonna leave your kids in the car, and you're not gonna pack them all up to go in the car to get a coffee. You're gonna go place that as a drive-through. So it is critical. I know some people don't like them, but, you know, I just ask yourself, what are you guys gonna do? You know? And if we're gonna make something successful, we have to have, if it's gonna be, you can't say,
So, Jay, I'm gonna kind of put you on the spot here. Our parking regulations, right, as of now, that's just been referenced. I mean, I know that we're sort of gonna be looking at parking, as we go through the workshop. In terms of what is being proposed here, would there be an opportunity to, if they needed the parking, to request waivers? Or do you think that we're gonna need to modify it somehow?
Well, these would be regulations, they'd be part of the site plan regulations, so of course, they could request a waiver. I guess the question, though, is we're still drafting these, if the, you know,
Right.
really, it's kind of the will of the board. Do you feel strongly about the single row of parking? Are you okay with the double row of parking? But just in terms of the draft, the language is on page 3. Top of the page, and it's not more than a single row of parking may be located between the front facade of the building and the street.
Does anybody have any questions for the, for tonight?
I'll just also add that in our existing parking regulations, under section 12014 off-street parking, we do have an interior green space requirement, starting at parking lots of 6,000 square feet or more, and it ranges from, it's not very onerous, it ranges from 5% to up to 10% of interior green space, depending on the size of the parking lot.
So when you say interior, do you mean breaking up within the parking?
Yes.
Okay, so, for instance, that retail that's 9,000 square foot on the corner. I mean, that parking lot's bigger than the 9,000 square
Yes.
foot, right? So what you're saying is the way the guidelines read would be, some of those spaces would have to be islands?
And
Is
that's
that
under
what
our
you mean?
existing regulations, so
Yeah.
it would be, but it's 5%. So yes, typically that's what you'd wind up doing, is putting in an island or something to break up the parking lot field, yeah.
Okay.
So 5% is 2 spaces, 10% is 4 spaces.
Right.
And sometimes those, there are waiver requests, again, my experience in other places, because plowing, cars going over the little islands that are there, so sometimes there's a trade-off. If you're not gonna put it inside, you can put it outside somewhere. And we would want some feedback when we come back in with a design on how you feel about this particular space and maybe others as we come forward.
you know, in the 50-foot setback, maybe it's plant some bigger trees, you know, something to break it up. I'm not against it. It's just between winter maintenance, snow plowing, when there's an island in the middle, gets through all the snow, ends up on that island, and then that gets wiped out, and it's,
And it'll make the lot bigger if you put an island in the middle of it, so.
then we have to make it bigger.
Right. So I think Mr. Petropoulos' idea of having a little berm there, we continue the protected fence across the front of it maybe, put some small trees there, I think that would help mask
Do enough
the building.
so you can still see it as you're
Right.
driving by.
Right.
But have some, you know, landscape it. I mean,
Yep.
you know, it's no different, I think, if you look at our shop up, you know, across from the garage where everybody goes.
Yep.
I mean, we cut down all the trees in front of that, but that's what we planted back. And there's plenty of pavement in front of that building, but
Yep.
it doesn't look ugly.
Oh, it's
I
all,
mean,
it's all very clean, so it looks very
You know,
sharp.
it just, you know, with a smoke guy.
Yeah.
Where he
Smoke and
goes in.
Spinks goes, yeah.
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 You know, so it's just planting the right trees and making it look good. Sprinkler system so that the grass stays green, you know? Things that that we'll do.
Maybe a rain garden or something to add some more depth.
We need some rain gardens for our drainage anyway. I don't know if there'll be any in that front piece.
Yeah,
but we
I
can.
like that idea.
We can.
Because the alternative is you're gonna shove the building up there. put
Well, if
your parking.
anybody wants a visual of, say, the corner could look, there's a property in Londonderry on Route 102. There's a salon there. There's Super Walk on the end, and
Yeah.
it has almost exactly what you have here with a very extensive setback. In this case, I think it's like 40 to 50 feet or so. 2 rows of parking. It is a 2-story building, but nevertheless, it's not, even as a 2-story building, it's set so far back, and there is no rise, really. It's pretty level, or at road grade, and
Next
it
building.
really is softened by a few
Yeah.
large trees that are at the edge of the parking lot there, and frankly, I think it provides shade for some of those parking spots as well. And it's not unseemly, it's very attractive, because of that distance, you know?
And both those buildings are very well maintained.
Yeah, yeah. And I think as you get further down to this second building and you round the bend a little bit on the highway as you approach Morgan Road, there's a rise there. And I don't know if you're intending on
We're gonna
keeping that.
we're gonna flatten.
You're gonna
a
flatten
lot of
that
it.
out? Okay.
We have to be seen.
Yeah.
Sure. And it'll be even wider, as you can see from your setback because of the bend in the road.
Yeah.
So, you won't notice it as much, really.
You know, it's interesting, I was just driving to Town Hall, and I passed a number of commercial projects on the Charles Bancroft Highway, and they all have these big, huge curb cuts, they're fully paved to the road, and boom, they're right there. Now, that is extremely convenient for somebody going in and out.
We won't get away with that.
No,
I mean, that's the trade-off, you're moving the buildings back.
absolutely, you know, that, absolutely. You know, so many of these projects are about balance, and I think having septic, you know, if you've been to Rose Meadows, it's extremely successful. I think it looks great. And to have those units with so much space in between them, it's pretty rare for a multifamily project. It's because they're on septic, and you get a feel of a very country project there.
So and then when we get to the main road, which is Morgan Road or whatever we're gonna call that, going through the project, again, we're facing, the units that are facing that are gonna be the same as Albuquerque. They're gonna, the front of the building, and you'll go in the back of the building. So, you know, I know there was some talk about having some green space in the front of the building, but we're gonna have a big green space in the front of the building, a 50-foot setback. Is that 50?
No,
What do we have
but
on
it
that?
is along Albuquerque,
It's along-
that's 50 feet,
50 feet on
Actually-
Albuquerque, on Morgan Road, what's that?
maybe 20 feet. you
Yeah,
know.
but again, there'll be a green space with just a sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're driving by, you're looking
No,
at the.
no cars, no parking.
No parking, you know, but then the road, we're calling it a driveway that goes between the commercial all the way down. Again, they're going in the back of the buildings, but we can't put too much green space between the parking because we have a bulkhead, we have other things to deal with to get that in. But all our green space is in front of the building that everybody driving by is gonna see.
Speaking about traffic real quick, guys, on the main entrance to Albuquerque there, the main entrance to Charles Bancroft, you said the right in, right out. Is that plan to be signage controlled? You can actually put talk to
you
the
put
state
in-
and put a median in.
Yeah, we put a median, there'll be
Okay.
an island, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's what the DOT.
Yeah, just because the left there would be absolutely miserable.
No,
Yeah, the
so
DOT would.
the DOT is gonna require, we're gonna have to do a little turning lane also. There'll be some work on 3A.
Yeah, a little access and decel coming in and out
Yep.
for safety.
Especially the daycare, that'll get really backed up. So,
We're hoping that will be, then, if everything goes as I have planned, I think everybody will be very happy who's gonna actually operate the daycare.
Have you looked into a side parking lot? Because the building's only 150 feet long, so to access,
A side parking lot?
yes, a parking lot to the side of the building.
Again, you're making
Got
people,
one there.
you're making people walk, then
Yeah. So on the retail, on sheet south, actually the north side of the retail, we're budgeting some space for a patio in case that is coffee and somebody wants to go sit outside. Now, on the other side, you'll see a little bit of a green area there. We had originally some parking spaces there, but I took them off because I think the promotion of the right in and the right out is going to, I think, be active. And I never like to have people backing out into, a street like that. So we eliminated those. We do have parking on the south side of the playground area for the daycare.
Yeah, because the perception is important, and it's unfortunate how lazy people can be. The length of the parking lots in a typical commercial zone, like in Hudson, for example, the parking lot is over 200 feet. It's over 300 feet from the building, and because of perception, it doesn't feel like as far as having to walk around a tiny building, because this is tiny in comparison to these buildings over here.
Well, also too, with parking in the rear and having a drive-through back there, that's not a very safe way to have it anyway, so.
Yeah.
Employees I can see, but you wouldn't want customers walking through a drive-through.
But
I've seen them like in Goffstown and Manchester. I think a Dunkin's one had a drive-through. You were blocked in by the drive-through. It was
Like-
miserable.
ideally, you would put the drive-through businesses in commercial lots that are not affiliated with or not associated with the residential, and then have non-drive-through businesses in the attached one.
We don't have a drive-through here,
That's what's currently
At the
permitted.
handicap, right down here.
right there.
Yeah.
I don't think I understood that.
They can put, like, if you look at the document that they have, this is commercial as they proposed it, but they also have parcel F and B, which are also intended to be drive-through.
Yeah.
Oh, and the
Well, if you
other
go
one.
back to the, right. So to be truthful, we had identified some drive-through uses north of Albuquerque on the Charles Bancroft before this got permitted at the town meeting vote. And then we started noodling with this, we kind of liked it and said, okay, it works. Now, that's not to say you couldn't do a bank on the other side. Yeah, I think we'd be lucky to get a nice drive-through end cap user there. That would be, I think, really good to have. We think this is the corner of Albuquerque and Charles Bancroft. We think it's a fantastic spot. Now, we may show this to somebody, they might not like it, but they might see that and say, well, we want to be on the other side of Albuquerque. Well, that's great. That's good biz for Rick, So, they're pretty savvy, all those end users, especially the nationals. They know what they're doing and what they want.
it's all traffic count.
Yeah,
If you don't have traffic count, they're not coming,
yeah.
And the extreme visibility of that location on that corner is every car on both those roads are driving by there, so.
Yeah, and if you're gonna have if you're gonna have even a small mom and pop operation, they need it easy for people to stop. So if you're competing with a Dunkin' Donuts, are they gonna go to the Dunkin' Donuts, or are they gonna go mom and pa where they can drive through? They can drive through, they're going to Dunkin' Donuts. They're not going to mom and pa's bakery because they can't drive through. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's what we've all created. You know, and as I said, you know, I go to Hot Rise all the time, and I'm sure some of you do too. But they're building right next door, and they're gonna have a drive-through. You know? That's why they're doing it, so they can have a drive-through.
Well, where this drive-through is positioned too, it provides for enough queuing, really, from what I can tell.
Right.
That, it gets tricky when you start to be out onto the road. We don't want
Right.
that.
Yeah, this isn't a McDonald's site. This is not,
No, no.
this isn't,
But just even, I'm sure you've all gone to press, look at the business they do with their drive-through.
yeah.
I mean, there's people waiting out there all the time. That
Oh, yeah.
side of the parking lots is
They have a
busy.
drive-through maze at that place. It's unbelievable.
That, I think that's terrible, because everything's too narrow.
It's
over
way
there.
too narrow.
Way
And
too
then
narrow.
the employees walking across the parking lot to deliver food.
I
It's
know,
ridiculous.
If something as intense as that expressed interest here,
You'd have to change it.
Yeah.
we would have to change the plan, yeah.
Yeah.
They
No, and we're
wouldn't,
not
they
gonna-
wouldn't go with it either.
No.
Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying, but there's the other side of the equation. They're very successful at their drive-through because the mom with her 2 babies in the car doesn't want to leave the kid to go get what she wants. And I don't blame her. I mean, I know when I had to go to the store with my 2 kids when they were babies, it kind of stunk. They'll load them all up to go in the car. And now if you leave them in the car, you're going to get arrested.
I get to make phone calls away from my food being made, so it's a great drive-through for me. So.
So whatever. You know, so those are things we have to look at. I mean, I'm not, I thought we could do it without it. We would, but I don't think we can.
So, I guess this kind of segue, well, I don't know what it segues in, but, the second item on tonight's agenda is the presentation regarding, the guidelines for the Northern Commercial Mixed-Use Village District. And I think what we're gonna be talking about tonight is off-street parking and, loading, if my understanding is correct, Jay.
A few things.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys want to stick around for that, because this may, you know, we can continue the discussion. It's a workshop, so
Yeah.
you're welcome to join us this evening in talking about that. And what I'll do is I'll let Jay, at this time, go forward, maybe make his presentation. If you guys have questions, certainly we can discuss them. So.
Just want to make one more note on this, because
Sure.
I do see Morgan Road as a road. But you do have a driveway coming in off of Albuquerque for the commercial building, so that would need a waiver too.
Say that again?
You've got a driveway
Yeah.
coming off of Albuquerque for the commercial building, so
Yeah.
that would need a waiver also.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
Well, I mean, we can go back to the road, but that committee didn't like that. So we're just trying to accommodate what everybody wants.
Right.
And I guess I have one question. Is it economically viable to have smaller buildings with parking around the smaller buildings?
No, probably not.
Yeah, it adds a significant cost to the structure, because now you get more exterior pieces to it and everything else, and it becomes inefficient, you know, so again, I like that word balance. I'm trying to balance the efficiency with open space, with function, with, and again, as I said earlier, we just don't want to make a mistake and do something that's like, oh man, why did we do that? So, and end up with vacant buildings. That's the last thing we want to do.
And how close is this project to the septic capability of the site?
Not that close. Yeah, I mean, the New Hampshire DES guys are quite high for loading for a site. And so we're well beneath those thresholds. We've got a preliminary layout of the resi, we got a preliminary layout of the commercial. anything with the commercial, if you do have coffee in there, it's a little different on septic. It's hot coffee going down there, so. But it's good sandy, it's a perfect site for septic, actually.
So would it be viable to have a reasonable sized restaurant in that commercial building as proposed?
We'd love to have one restaurant in there,
110.
one
Yeah,
tenant,
yeah.
you know.
It's likely that type of tenant, like a T-Bones, you've seen how successful they are in Hudson. You know, they have 150 parking spaces.
Right.
So it's a big operation. I think Rick's vision, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but, you know, those uses that a town of this size, the dance, the workout place, the dance studio, the nail salon, those, you may have those already, I don't know, but you may not have them in a new building, and so, Morgan and I are involved in a project in Nashua that they tear down some junky buildings and put a new retail building in there, and the tenant activity was very surprising. It was very active. A lot of people, even though they're already on the street, want to be in a new building, so.
Are there any design aspects of the new building that was desirable?
Well, if you know Rick, he likes agricultural looking, he likes barn looking, he likes New England looking, and he's meeting with the architect tomorrow. And now in the resi, we're sticking to the blueprint of what we've got at Rose, which is very attractive.
We just don't know what we're gonna do for siding yet.
On the resi, but on the front, Rick,
Yeah.
you're excited about that? I mean,
Yeah,
you could.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think flipping, going back to that, flipping the buildings around and facing Albuquerque is gonna look fantastic. I wish if I would've thought of it earlier, I would've done some of the units at Rose Meadow that way, to be honest with you.
On the question about the square footage in one restaurant, what I see in my experience right now is leasing of max 3,000 to 3,200 square feet. And that's just due to the economy. Nobody wants to get in there at a 9,000 square footer and then find out the traffic is down to a 3,000 square foot area. So you see some reserving options if it doesn't rent out next door or the space opens up, but for the most part, you're chopping these things up, and
Yeah. So that'll be about a third of this.
that's a max that I've been seeing.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
So Jay, if you wanna, we'll go into the next.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Can I have this?
Yes.
Thank you.
You gotta know the latest version.
Sorry.
You sound wants to meet you.
Okay, all right, understood.
Paper if anybody wants it. So there's really only a few items on here. For those who've seen this before, this is our third version. The first version, let's just say the first round of changes are shown in red. The second round of changes are in blue. And the third round of changes are in green. I'm gonna run out soon, but.
Color coding everything.
Have to go to yellow.
So red, blue, green, okay.
Oh, yeah, there's red. So, first change, as I lose my voice, one of the things we wanted to insert was just the reference, because we've talked about it a few times, that we have existing building design guidelines. Those are in section 12013. So I just stuck in here a reference. So, no confusion, those govern. As well as what's in here. What's in here is supplemental to what we already have. Moving on down. Very small change also on page 1. We just added the last meeting. Utilities should be placed underground, period, not where feasible. It was a Lou comment. And then really, I think the only other change is down on page 5, where we just added a little bit more to the landscaping. So we have an existing section on landscaping in the site plan regulations, section 120.8. It actually requires what I think we didn't want, which is planting evergreens in a wall. So this language just says, notwithstanding that section, landscaping uses screening should be naturalistic in appearance, have a mixture of trees, shrubs, deciduous, and evergreen. So that is it. Those are all the changes that I can recall that came out of our last meeting. Obviously, we were talking earlier today about the parking requirement. So again, that's really at the pleasure of the board. If you want to keep the single row or you want to go to the double row. And that is right now, again, as we referenced, what page am I on? Page 3, number 5, right above the image. So that's where that language is. So I guess, unless there's questions about the other changes or there's other changes people are looking for, that seems to be the point that was raised today of greatest concern.
Mm-hmm.
It could stay the same. It could become not more than a double row, or it could go away altogether.
Anybody have any questions?
I do.
Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, just because what's before us now doesn't necessarily, and we may be okay with that, wouldn't this, if we kept these guidelines, it basically forces someone to come before us and tell us why they need something different, correct? So, I have no problem with that. I'd personally rather have this guide and they work to achieve that, and if they can't, they come in, they talk to us. I mean, I suppose some could read it and be turned off and say you're making it development difficult, but on the flip side, they'll see that there were exceptions made, and for various reasons, if that's the case. I don't think there's too many things in here that are that stringent. I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that I'd want to remove it or alter it.
Yeah, I think the way it's drafted now is pretty good for more professional buildings, don't have a whole lot of
Yeah.
retail sales.
General, yeah.
Right,
General
but the
consumption.
retail, I think we may have to adjust our verbiage on this to make it more feasible
That's a good point.
for anyone to use this. But professional wise, I think this is more than enough parking these days,
Yeah.
since COVID.
Would you make that clarification inside here, like professional office
that makes
versus
sense, Jay.
retail? And maybe add,
Does that make sense?
At
Something like
that
I can
point,
make that distinction.
at that point, it can discourage uses that need more parking. But if we allow, or it could cause people, the developers, to just cater it to its specific use when it comes to the planning phase.
The uses change over time.
Yeah,
True.
exactly. So it's
Consider that
harder
also.
True.
to regulate it
Yep.
if we do that.
That is a point.
Could you repeat that, Jay?
For-
Jeremy
Yeah.
had a comment, could you repeat that?
Yeah, so what I was saying was, in my opinion, the way it's written now is very, very good for professional space, right? A lawyer's office, CPA, whatever else, right? But retail space, I think your suggestion is much more practical use of space. So I think defining between the two might be a way around this, so.
And I think the concern of Jared was, well, what if you start with a retail and then you flip to an office or a commercial?
Right.
Right.
Kind of defeats the purpose.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
keep in mind though, this is, if I'm not mistaken, right, this is commercial zone land, we could come in with
no buildings everywhere on 30 acres, right?
Right up to 50 feet.
Yeah, so I'm, so.
With parking
Yeah,
in
we're
front of
aware
it.
of that.
You know, so
We're well aware, but
don't take that wrong, it's just, I've been waiting a long time to do it this way. Okay? And I still wanna do it this way. And I'm telling you, as I've said every time, the problem, you know, that's why, and you guys have been very good about having an open discussion, and that's why we're having it, and I want your input, but, you know, again, I say, any one of you go someplace where there's only one row of parking, and then you're gonna go park in the back of the building, or you're gonna drive by. Especially when you have 10, now, we're gonna have a small amount, but are you gonna, what are you gonna do? You know, I mean, just personally yourself. What are you gonna do?
I'm leaving here tonight feeling encouraged. I think you heard our comments. And I think if we do a good job presenting that front of our site, which is so important, that I think you'll give us due consideration on the double row of parking.
Yeah, what I found in my own personal use is professional buildings that have a front and a back entrance due to having common interior space. I'll park out back then all the time, but that's not what we're talking about here. So we're talking more of a retail space. You want everyone in the front of the building having one entrance. So I think it's two totally different things.
But this section is specifically for layout requirements for non-residential buildings, of which retail is a part.
Correct.
Right? As are professional offices.
Yep.
So, I don't know, is there wiggle room enough with what we have, I guess is the question? Or do we feel compelled to further clarify? I mean, you know, you go down the road of further clarifying and It's too much.
I do think the challenge is that challenge of what if the use changes in the building? So how,
Yeah. Which is why I'm inclined to say, let's make this double row, not single row. And what's really pushing me towards that is the photograph beneath this paragraph that shows a single row of parking by the buildings, and I just keep thinking to myself, where would customers park? Where would I park if I wanted to visit this building?
and that's predominantly office.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah.
even if it's office, there's gonna be staff in there. There's gonna be other patrons in there.
Yeah.
A single row doesn't seem sufficient.
I'm looking at measured a commercial zone in Lexington, which is definitely a different type of town, where I had to park in the back of a building and there's no parking in front of the building, and the building is right up against the road there. And I think the main advantage is they have a little bit more demand that might encourage people to be willing to walk around the building. The building is basically the same size as the one that would be proposed here. But yeah, the only thing that makes it so that we might want to loosen up is the fact that it's harder to get viable commercial businesses in Litchfield. Because like the center of Lexington, Massachusetts is much denser and many more customers than Litchfield.
And all of those buildings seem to front onto the street.
Yeah.
There's no parking in front, unless it's on the
Just
street.
very limited on the street.
Right.
Yeah, as you can see, there's a lot
Thank
of
you, good night.
behind the building.
So maybe this item should read something along the lines of every effort should be made so that not more than a single row, like what you already have here. But at least it speaks to, you know, we're really looking for you to try.
Right.
You know?
We could put that way, that is single rows encouraged.
What does that mean?
And no more
legally
than
wise,
double?
Jay? We encourage it, but we don't have a hard and fast rule.
Yeah.
What would
It's
leave
just
us
that,
with?
it's not required. You're sending the signal
Yeah.
that that's what you prefer,
Yep.
but it's not a requirement.
These are guidelines.
They're guidelines anyway.
Right.
These aren't hard and fast requirements,
Yeah.
so in that spirit, it's like,
Fine.
well,
And is it otherwise a double row?
Double,
Yeah.
triple, quadruple, who knows?
That's the question. Do we
Full on
want
parking lot. Bus terminal all of a sudden. Who knows? So,
Depends on what it is,
Yeah.
and where it's
Right, I'll-
located.
because it's balancing economic feasibility to the design. Because theoretically, you can have smaller buildings where you can have parking more surrounding the buildings, but it's less economically viable.
Right.
And in some cases, side parking is more easier to fit than others.
You know, one more point here, that there are no other parcels that this is gonna happen on other than this one parcel at the Northern Commercial District.
There are a few other theoretical parcels that it can happen to,
Okay.
but
It could be teardowns, who knows?
yeah, like currently,
5 acres.
there is the lot, but at what?
If you're gonna do a mixed use, it has to be 5 acres.
There's one off of St. Francis Way that owned by the Colbys.
Again, you're not even gonna see it. It's
Right.
not even gonna be, you're not even gonna see it from 3A.
yeah, it's me down the hill.
Yeah.
And everything else is a tear down.
Mhm. Yeah, and this-
And consolidating houses.
Yeah, and that one,
You're gonna do it.
yeah, even the Colby one, it would probably be more economically viable to remove the houses for visibility.
So I guess my only point is, this is what we're zoning for right at this one lot. This is what this is for, this one lot. In north, but right now, we're not tearing nothing down, we're not doing anything to do that.
We have to be careful as a planning board. We don't want to do spot zoning. We don't want to be, one parcel is encompassing all of our plan.
So all I'm getting at is if there's a problem with the dual parking, you can change the regulations down the road if it really becomes a pro in everybody's.
Well, I think Letha's suggestion is probably the best way to go about this, as far as it's ambiguous. We suggest one thing, but it's not really, nothing hard and fast about it. Right.
And when we think about too, long-term, this right now is for the northern end of town, right? At some point, this might also be modeled down the southern end of town, correct? I mean, we thought at some point it's possible, right? And I think it would be, looking to the future, I would think it would be confusing to see mixed-use development in two areas of town that is slightly different. So that's why, I feel it's more important that we think through these things and not have one, as you suggest, not have one project necessarily dictate something, so that we do have something that's a little bit, okay, it might be general and a little bit deliberately vague and ambiguous, but I would hope that that would encourage some conversation.
Yeah, I think it shows our intention, at least, what we'd like to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
So how about not more than a single row of parking located between the front facade of the building and the street is preferred? Parking areas located to the side or rear of the building are encouraged.
That sounds pretty good.
Leaves it open enough.
Yeah. That does leave it open to
Yeah.
a big wall of parking, or a big field of parking.
I always, as a lawyer, I look to what's the intent of a regulation, because that's when you have to challenge a regulation. If we came to this board, asked you to waiver, you said thumbs down, you don't have a hardship, there's no, we're not giving you relief, the reg is the reg. I always have to, if I want to challenge it, go to what's the intent of the regulation. So the intent of your regulation is, you don't want that sea of asphalt, and theoretically, you don't want it right off the road, all pavement. So you might want to think about, if you're going to establish a regulation, what's the purpose here? And in this case, just in this case alone, but it might apply overall, it's, we don't want to see that double field of parking within 20 feet of Charles Bancroft, which we're not showing. But more importantly, we don't want to just see it that close with no buffering. So maybe you could say, if you're stuck on this double row, single row thing, you could say double row is permitted, provided that there's landscaping between the parking and the public. Because that's not required. We have a landscape plan, but it's not required, Jay, I don't believe.
Not necessarily, no. You can't put parking within the front setback.
Right.
So presumably there'd be some landscaping, but it doesn't specifically say. Although it's really two factors, though. It is the visual, but it's also that the district is intended to encourage walkability, and fields of parking are not very walkable. A double row is not a big deal necessarily, but your typical shopping center parking lot is not a walkable environment.
Yeah.
So again, we're proposing a 50-foot setback, which you could move the building, everything closer, and B, the parking can be in the setback. But we're going with a 50-foot setback with a double row. So we have more room, we have a 50-foot area to landscape.
Which is better aligned with the intention of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get there. You're trying to get,
Yeah.
you're listening to us, but
No.
maybe you can have a double row if you have a 50-foot setback from the right-of-way, between the parking and the right-of-way. And that's what we're showing you, is a 50-foot setback with our parking.
Does that make feasible sense, Jay?
Well, I
Not
think
just applying here, but in general.
you could. I think the way we've got to propose now is it's not a requirement. It just says
Right.
it's preferred.
These are just guidelines.
Right.
It's preferred.
Right.
Yeah, with 2 rows, you can have parking on each side of the street. Once you go beyond 2, that's when you end up with the double row combos that definitely make it a big sea of asphalt.
Okay, so.
Right.
So I'm not, so when you say preferred is 1 row, but if we're showing 2 rows, it doesn't, that's okay?
Technically, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Technically,
It would be,
Okay.
yeah.
This is a discussion on the guidelines that
We
we want
wanted
to
to-
see overall. And, you know, we know there are going to be exceptions, for lack of a better term, or designs that are fit the intent, to
Right.
Mr. Hollis's point.
Okay.
That, you know, we're trying to wrap our arms around something that reflects what we want to see in the mixed-use village as a whole, but provide enough wiggle room and flexibility so that developers can come up with solutions that fit our needs, and fit within the scope of your financial
Preferred
feasibility.
works for you and I can have a double row, I'm perfectly happy.
Yeah, I think just removing the words may and must out of those.
Yeah.
Because that makes it hard on you, it makes it hard on the applicant. Language.
And we will, but I think, so, because I want to see nice things on 3A, I think having the setback for the parking lot is okay. And for the future for everybody. And that's why we're showing a 50-foot, because I think that's what, I don't think anything should be right up against it.
It depends on the style of the development. If it's a development off of a major road like you have,
Well,
you want a setback between the
but
major
anything
roads.
else in the northern commercial district on 3A would, the rest of the land I have that all abuts 3A or across the street, if people bought all the houses and decided to develop that.
Yeah.
Again, I think we need that 50-foot setback.
Yeah. If we instead have a more internal cluster of commercial, it is different in that situation. If you look at the materials that we used to inspire some of this, a lot of them are probably a more dense type of neighborhood in general, where you'll have roads going through, where you have businesses pretty close by on both sides of the road probably, with a single row of parking on each side of that road, with parking on the sides and back. But yeah, it's harder to make that viable in Litchfield.
And when you're talking about internal, that's easier to do than the front when you're facing if you're gonna, if someone's gonna come forward with just an internal development like that, okay, whatever, however they can do it. But if we're gonna have commercial, and I think for Litchfield, if we're gonna have commercial, it has to face Albuquerque, it has to face 3A.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, I think we need to have, I'm asking you to go with a bigger setback, because I think it's a much better than having parking lot 20 feet off of 3A.
I think it definitely suits Albuquerque much better having that setback based on what our town people want, based on the surveys we did with the Economic Development Committee also. So they all want to keep that farm town feel.
Yeah.
So,
Setback.
you know, that's one way to accomplish it, I guess.
If we want to differentiate, we can say, if there's more than one row of parking, you need a bigger setback. Because it wouldn't look bad to have a single row of parking. That won't look bad close to the main road, probably, because it's tiny.
That's fine.
That's not a bad idea, we could do that. Does that make sense, Jay?
So,
Jay's got something else
we
cooking.
already say that under existing regulations, parking areas shall be located to the side of rear proposed principal structures and may not be located within 50 feet of any public right-of-way or within side or rear setbacks.
So we already have that.
So that's already a requirement.
But if they didn't put parking in the front, but a building in the front, they could be within 50 feet. Basically, it
Building
makes-
can't be.
Building can't be, I'm talking about the.
I'm saying that you spoke to parking, you didn't speak to the building itself. So the building could be close to the road, couldn't it?
No.
No.
No?
Building's 50. The parking can't be within 50 feet?
That's what you just read, yeah.
Okay. That's what it should be.
So, okay.
Yeah, it can only be close to internal roads, not the
Right.
external. roads.
Although driveways can be.
Yeah, drivers have to.
I think this language works.
It's fine.
All right.
So, are we gonna go with just only should or preferred?
Good night, guys.
Okay, have a good evening. Thank you.
It's up to you guys.
Yeah, it's the will of the board. So, what do you guys wanna?
I think the preferred language is probably better, just to show our intent more.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, spell out the intent, and if a developer provides plans that don't align perfectly with the intent, at least they understand what the intent was, and it's up to them to justify what their plan is for our approval.
Like he did tonight.
Right.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
I think that makes sense.
All right. Can make that
One more
change.
change, which color are you going with?
One more change. You could send it to public hearing if you wish with that amendment,
Well,
or
let's
you could wait.
wait and do the change.
I was gonna say, and I have a couple of pictures for you. I didn't send
Oh, send them to
you,
me.
So it might help. I don't know.
You know, I would
Since
like
we'll
to.
have to look at this next time anyway.
You know, it would be helpful if we did have some sort of a visual of, I mean, I know they show the plans and what that looks like in the sketch. But if we actually had something visual to look at in terms of the examples that were presented tonight and some of the things that you guys had suggested,
We do, Rose Meadows.
Rose Meadows, whatever. And to take a look at those, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
To me, I'm a visual person, so I can look at a plan and, yeah, it looks, I know what
So
the
we'll get
building
this
is gonna
to
be
Jay
and all
by
that,
the end
but,
of the week,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, truly, yeah, get me what you can by the end of the week. And I can always drive around Rose Meadows, take some pictures, and, you know, we can
It's
do a
looking nice out
presentation
there.
on it.
Yeah, it's looking good.
All right, I'll do that. And parking, I held off because we're still waiting. The Senate passed an amendment to the House bill. This is specifically on the residential parking requirement, and I don't know what that is, but there's a committee of conference. Hasn't been scheduled yet, so within the next couple of weeks, we'll know what it looks like.
Okay.
So we'll bring, hopefully, maybe the next time we'll have that too. We'll have the parking ones as well.
Sounds good.
All right.
And like, interestingly, we didn't get any time spent talking about the front yard area. So I
Yeah, that
guess,
didn't come up again.
so I guess they're not protesting too hard on 25%.
I was actually trying to eyeball that on their example. It looked as though,
I was gonna say, we decided last time that what is present at those other communities equals the 25%.
Right.
Based on our rough calculation.
Or they could push it back a little bit and meet it.
You know, and as we spoke with Mr. Charbonneau last time, that realization, I think, was made that that square footage wasn't as grand as you would think when you say a figure like 25%.
It's
Yeah.
10 feet.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what we said, about 10 feet. So if I'm zooming in on this plan right now, it looks like they are set back a little more from that sidewalk, have a little bit more green space. It looks like I mean, realistically, they have so much land. That shouldn't be an issue. But if that sidewalk is at least 4 feet
Yeah.
in width, they're probably there with this concept.
And I love that sidewalk that's between the improvements and Albuquerque.
Yeah.
I
Be a nice
didn't
walk.
realize that was gonna be there.
Be a nice walk.
It's so many wonderful walking paths, you know?
Yeah.
It comes right
Yes.
in line with the path that leads up to that already, and
Yeah,
Yeah, I got a question for you, legally wise. Because he's flipping all these houses around, address wise, they'll be addressed on the backside, I assume, correct?
That's really a fire department question, but my
Because
guess
that's
is
what we determine
yes.
front, right? So if we determine
yeah.
front is actually the back, that's where that has come into play.
Because that's where the
Access.
access is coming
Right.
from, so I'd have to think that they're
Right.
gonna name that drive and,
Address the houses off of that. Yeah.
addresses beyond that.
he said that the last time he was
think
here.
he
that-
did.
I was gonna verify
Mention it.
what front is gonna be
With
then,
them
because that's what it would.
it's mainly just going to
Yeah.
be visually that's the front, but
Right,
not really.
right. Okay.
Right.
That
And-
checks out then.
And one thing to comment on is if you look at this, if you view it from within the open space as displayed in the big field there, or as displayed from the parking lot, all you're going to see are the parking structures.
Yeah.
That's going to be the dominant view from that angle.
That's once you're
Absolutely.
inside the community.
Right.
But but
Yeah.
that will include from the commercial area.
Yep.
Gives the neighborhood kids something to play wall ball against.
Oh, yeah, that'd be a great little play area there. Right?
Yeah. And some of these are gonna, and we kind of mentioned it last time, but these bigger structures are gonna fall under our design regs.
Right.
So they're either gonna have to get a waiver or screen them, put in some landscaping, something.
Yeah.
I think it's coming together.
Yeah.
I think
I
it's coming
agree.
together. I agree. There's this issue obviously with double parking, but it sounds like it's kind of congealing a little bit. So.
It's an iterative process.
Until Jay runs out of colors.
That's it.
I'm sorry?
Until you run out of colors.
Until I run out of
Font
colors.
All right.
Go back to one.
Anything else about work session this evening? Anything, Jay?
That's it so far.
Okay. So we'll be revisiting again. So.
We will.
All right. Moving on to committee reports. Any reports from any committees? Jeremy, do you have anything about economic development?
Nothing major because we were, didn't meet quorum to actually have a meeting. However, we were informed that the Board of Selectmen extended our charge till end of the year. So we will have another meeting coming up, end of this month, which would be, hold on one second, guys. It would be the 25th of June in this very room at 6:30 PM.
Okay.
All right.
Capital Improvement Committee meeting was canceled, given we didn't have much to discuss at this point. But I suspect next time when we meet, we will have folks coming before the committee. The Conservation Commission meets this Thursday here in Town Hall at 6:30. Lower Merrimack Local Merrimack Local River Advisory Committee is meeting June 5th at 7 in Nashua City Hall. They have to elect a new chair. Fran Murphy stepped down for members to step up. So we'll see what happens with that. Anything from NRPC, Jay?
Nothing new. Our next meeting will be, I should double check before I misspeak. Next meeting will be on the 18th.
Okay.
That's a full commission meeting.
Full commission. Very
It's
good.
also the annual meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to minutes. Approval of minutes of May 20th, 2025. Did anybody have an opportunity to take a look at those? Have any questions, amendments, anything they want to talk about?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Page 5, paragraph, from the top, 1, 2, 3, 4. I count, 1, 2, 3, 4. In bold, it says 49 feet, fourth paragraph. I don't remember having this conversation. I don't know, like, if I was asleep during that, or it says there was discussion about potentially reducing the height of existing structures to 49 feet.
Yeah.
49 feet is a very exact footage.
Right, yeah,
I'm trying to
right.
remember, like, I was scratching my head going,
So this looks like the
did we talk about
parking.
something maybe like less
It's
than
probably-
50 feet?
There's probably less length of the
It's
buildings.
probably length. We
Yeah,
talked
we
about the
covered
length.
length,
of
Because
the
but not
that's
height.
discussed in the next paragraph where they say, the board examined the relevant section of the design guidelines, noting the applicants are required to incorporate architectural features to reduce visual massing for non-residential facades of 50
Yep.
feet or more
Right.
in length. So if I go back to the 49, that's less than 50 feet, but what are we trying to say there? Should we just remove that? Because nobody seems to
Probably strike the
know
whole
what that
paragraph.
means.
I think I'd strike that, yeah.
Straight the whole paragraph.
Well, the rest of the paragraph is okay. I mean, that's accurate, but it was just that first sentence with the
Yes.
49 feet and even if it's not height, even if it's
Strike sentence 1 and 2.
width, I'm not sure that it makes any sense. So, would everybody be okay if we took that out?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know what that means either.
The phantom.
So strike sentence 1 and sentence 2 in paragraph, that was 4? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Just sentence 1.
Just sentence
Well, the
one.
second one ties into 1 though. It's only sort of a sentence though, it's lowercase w. So it's,
There, even though,
see the periods? So, 49 feet period, then which could improve, so it ties into the first sentence.
oh, okay, I saw that as a comma.
Yeah.
Oh,
So strike the sentence, strike everything between there and functionality.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, that's fine.
Yeah.
good catch.
What exactly is the thing that was pointed out?
From there was discussion, I'm sorry, yes, from there was discussion all the way down to functionality gets,
Yeah.
gets stricken.
Yeah, that's the first sentence, right?
Yeah, that is a
Yeah,
comment, it's
well,
very
first
small, very
sentence.
small on my screen.
Yep.
So,
So normally, Joan takes notes on the revisions that we do.
Yeah, she may be watching the meeting, so
It,
she usually does. If
it'll be on the tape.
it'll be on the tape.
Yeah.
So
I think we made it pretty clear now on that one.
Other than that, I had nothing else.
okay. Anybody have anything else?
I didn't notice anything that was
I didn't either.
was enough to change.
Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion. If that's the case, I'll entertain a motion to approve these minutes as amended.
So moved.
I have a motion by Letha. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Second by Jeremy. Okay. Any further discussion? All right. All those approval of the meeting minutes for May 20th, 2025, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained. Okay. Motion passes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 0, 0. Okay. Thank you. All right. Any other business this evening? Jay, do you have anything?
I do not.
Does anybody have anything?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Well, I certainly don't have anything. I think with that in mind, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would like to adjourn. I'll make a motion to adjourn for the evening.
All right, Jeremy's would like to make a motion to adjourn. Would someone like to second that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Sharon. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 6-0-0. Thank you for joining us this evening, and we will see you next time.